Kenyans have lost faith in the government as fewer people register to vote in the upcoming August elections. Women continue to be paid less compared to men despite doing the same jobs and having the same qualifications. The standard of living in Kenya continues to be at an all-time high with no hopes of declining. The number of youth abusing drugs in the United States of America continues to rise. Live from Uzalendo newsroom, I am Lisa Mudhani and we welcome our viewers from Kenya and around the world. We will be with you for the next 30 minutes. Thank you for joining us. This is Uzalendo News. You can join the conversation on our social media handles, Facebook at Uzalendo News, Twitter at Uzalendo News, and remember to join the hashtag Uzalendo News Live. IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati recently stated that only 2.5 million Kenyans registered to vote against the IEBC's target of 10 million. He stated that this is a very low turnout. He urged Kenyans to register to vote and assured Kenyans that the next general election would be free, fair, and credible. Uzalendo's Amy Gishia has more on the story.
With the upcoming general elections in August 2022, Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, commonly known as IEBC, conducted voter registration in two phases. The first phase was conducted from October 4 to November 5th, 2021. The second phase was conducted from January 17th to February 6, 2022. IEBC had a target of around 10 million new voters, however, they were only able to register around 2.5 million new voters. The Commission attributed low numbers to voter apathy and national ID related issues. The Commission was mainly targeting the youth, however, the youth have stated that they have lost faith in the country's leadership and do not see politics as a solution to the challenges they are facing. Okay, kwa maoni yako, hizi elections unaona kama vijana wamejitokeleza kwenda kuvote?
Sioni. Juu hata mimi niko na mmoja na ameregister kwa nguvu ya mdomo.
Mimi kama youth man nimeboeka na politician. Wametudanganya watatupea kazi. Mimi hadi nimenyimwa kura. Na sasa mimi kwa siasa mimi si huko. Juu wametudanganya wanatupea kazi, wanatusaidia lakini hawajatusaidia.
It is important for the Kenyan youth to realize that their voice and their vote are important and can play a key role in the country's future.
And now our correspondent Amy Gishia joins us live. Now, Amy, it is obvious that the Kenyan youth have lost faith in the country's electoral process. What can the IEBC do to restore their faith?
Honestly, Lisa, I don't think the IEBC can do much now. They should have used the nomination election to build their credibility. They wasted that opportunity, and the suggestion of rigging or carrying are not really encouraging.
That is true, Amy. But does the low voter registration predict that there will be a low voter turnout in the upcoming August elections?
Not really, Lisa, and that's because politicians have a few more months of campaigns and they can rally and mobilize Kenyans to vote for them with the promise to be the key to change.
Thank you, Amy, for the insight. Hopefully, the youth and Kenyans in general will learn that the future is in their hands.
I hope so too, Lisa.
To all the youth out there listening, if you wouldn't let your grandparents or your parents pick your playlist, why would you let them pick your representative who is going to determine your future? Joining us live is Mr. Martin Ondati, a political analyst and government expert. Now, Mr. Martin, the IEBC registration did not go according to plan. What do you think is leading to the low youth turnout in voter registration?
First of all, I think the messaging. You know, there was a lot of disconnect between IEBC and the youth because, you know, most youth don't read the newspapers. They don't watch television. They don't listen to radio. So the IEBC was doing their messaging in the papers, and most of the youth don't read newspapers. So you see, that is a wrong audience. So they are missing the audience. Two, the kind of messages that were being sent out there were not largely pro-youth. You needed the IEBC to get young people to do the messages, and in a way that is catchy and is attractive and communicates to the youth. So they are not able to do that. Three, the youth have issues, and they feel that the change of government has not really touched the issues. Of course, that is misplaced because things like student loans affect them. And the leaders they elect are the ones who determine who gets loans. Two, it is the policies that the political class makes that determines the future of the country. So the youth need to be more actively engaged, but they don't seem to understand the nexus between the political leadership and their day-to-day living. So there is that disconnect. So they need to get more sensitization to be able to understand the relationship between the two. My only fear is the youth might, most of them don't turn up to vote. They have the thinking that elections are all about money. So they have to sit and want to be paid. So that becomes a big problem.
But do you think that the problem is caused by the fact that politicians have made promises that they have been unable to keep once they are elected?
Not all promises are kept, but not all, you know, nobody fulfills the promises 100%, but some of the promises have been fulfilled. So that cannot be an excuse, because if somebody doesn't fulfill the promises, you vote them out. In fact, it's good that you turn out and vote them out if they have not fulfilled the promises. By failing to turn up, you are giving those who gave promises which they didn't fulfill an opportunity to still remain in power. So they continue making the bad policies.
So, Mr. Martin, it is better to go and vote than to just give up and stay at home.
You know, when you don't vote, then you are voting for the person you have not voted for indirectly. You give them an opportunity to be elected by a minority. And you know, once a leader is elected, it does not matter whether you voted or you didn't vote. He or she becomes your leader. So the youth have an obligation to turn out and vote. And you know, the world has always been changed by young people. You've seen where we had uprisings. It is the youth who normally started. Even here, we had student leaders. When we were students our time, we agitated for multipartyism. We are the ones who fought and brought multipartyism in this country. We had Raila Odinga, we had James Orengo, we had the Young Turks. They did fight for the liberation of this country. They were young people. We've had the likes of Wafula Buke, we've had Mwandawiro Muganga. They were students. And they came out and some of them even paid with their lives, like the late Adungos. They were students. And they were able to agitate, and they fought and we got multipartyism. They fought, we got expanded media freedom. They fought, we got a better country. They fought and we are able to push until the international community managed to get Mandela released. So the youth have been very critical, but apparently now the youth are very passive. They think that they are in their own world.
What can the incoming government do in order to encourage the youth to participate in politics? Other than changing their message and the platforms they're using, what can they do to encourage the youth that politics does affect their day-to-day lives?
The youth don't need to be encouraged. They need to know, especially the ones who have gone to school like you. You have an obligation to go out there and vote. You don't need anybody to tell you. When we were youth, we didn't wait for anybody to tell us that we need to. You don't sit and wait for a government to come and tell you that you need to go and vote. Nobody told us to go and do what we were doing. We were students. We had challenges that students normally go through. But we used to engage in national discourse. When Ouko died, I led the demonstrations against that heinous act. We were in Kisumu battling the GSU and the police. Every afternoon we were in the streets in Nairobi here, fighting the GSU to get Moi to accede to multipartism. We've been involved in the constitutional review processes, fighting and agitating. So nobody told us to go and do it, but we felt it's an obligation that we had to get involved, and we did. And the fruits are there for all and sundry to see.
So, Mr. Martin, what is your advice to the youth who are watching this program from home?
They need to go out there, and you know the country belongs to them. Uhuru has borrowed very heavily. Who are going to pay those debts? And you know, whether you are involved or not, you will still have to pay the debts. So whatever policies, and you know, that's now about a policy. The wrong policies which mediocre leadership makes affects all of you. So if you don't participate in voting and going out there and getting change, then you shoulder those burdens. Because you can imagine the next generation is going to inherit very heavy debts. I see then whoever becomes president has to struggle in the next 5 years paying debts. Because money was borrowed, money was misappropriated, money was put on wrong platforms. The benefits, the projects were exaggerated, and they might not pay off immediately. So we are now in a very awkward position. And for that, the youth are the people who are going to work. The people who are in the 70s, 80s, they are in their sunset years. So they will go where President Kibaki has gone. And you people remain with the debts. So if the country is messed up, it is your future.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Martin. Women in Kenya continue to be paid less than men despite doing the same work and having the same qualifications. According to a report written by the World Economic Forum, a woman only earns 55 shillings for every 100 shillings earned by a man. Join the conversation on our social media platforms and let us know what you think. Facebook, Uzalendo News, Twitter, Uzalendo News, and join the hashtag Uzalendo News Live. Faith Twigger has more on the story.
12 years after the Constitution was enacted prohibiting gender discrimination, Kenyan women are still not being compensated equally to men despite equal work. According to a 2017 survey by the World Economic Forum, a Kenyan woman only earns 55 shillings for every 100 shillings earned by a man for doing the same profession. Currently, women are 30% less likely to have the same opportunities as men in Kenya.
Kusema ukweli, dunia imebadilika na mambo imebadilika, si kama hapo mwanzo. Mahali ambapo wanaume walikuwa wanapata zaidi kuliko wanawake. Kulingana pia na vile mambo inabadilika, utapata kwamba wanawake pia wameanza kuenda kwa viwango za juu sana katika hali ya malipo pia, kwa sababu utasikia terms zile ambazo wako nazo ni terms za juu.
In the olden times, women were more of household managers, and like nowadays they have stepped up, and I think the companies have standardized the salaries, and I think they are being paid equally, unlike olden days where men were chauvinistic and getting more pay just because they are men.
Many arguments have been made to explain the gender pay gap inequality. However, if the woman and man have the same qualifications and do the same job, then they should get equal pay. Every woman, every girl deserves to get paid for what they are worth. Faith Twigger for Uzalendo News.
Equal pay is not just a women's issue. When women get paid equally, their family incomes rise and the whole family benefits. Joining us live is Esther from Women's Empowerment Link. Now, Esther, according to a report written by the World Economic Forum in 2017, a woman only earns 55 shillings for every 100 shillings earned by a man. How applicable is this in 2022?
Well, just to say this, there is no study that is yet to prove this. However, there is a lot of hearsay, especially when you go to forums where we have women roundtable discussions. You'll always hear such discussions coming up, and I'm so sure even those who are watching this can attest to this at their workplaces. They can attest to this, but there is no study or research that has been done to actually factualize this.
Now, Esther, how has the women representative seat helped in terms of empowering women?
I would say that the women representative seat has been able to see a lot of policies, or let's say movements around the rights of women and girls being apprehended, and I would also say that the seat has seen women, and this again is dependent on person to person and area to area, but I believe that the seat has enabled women and girls to have a voice, to be empowered. We are seeing the women representatives collaborating with CSOs. We are seeing them collaborating with women groups, having women out there talking about issues around discrimination, around violence, and around abuse. So I feel like that seat has really helped to bring out and to also voice a lot of issues around women and girls. I also believe that the women reps have been able to advocate and lobby for better policies. We're seeing so many counties are coming up with their gender policies, and we're seeing so many support from the female parliamentarians, and especially the women reps. So I believe this seat has been able to empower women to some extent, and again, depending from person to person and area to area.
Now, Esther, what plans have you put into place as Women Empowerment Link in terms of empowering women so that they compete equally with men for top leadership positions?
Wow, like I said earlier, there's a department of transformative leadership that Women's Empowerment Link is working to ensure that women and girls at grassroots level they are being capacity builds, and their capacity is being strengthened towards participating in decision-making spaces and leadership spaces. So, for example, if you go to our website, we have a knowledge hub where we have trainings on gender-responsive budgeting and women leadership, and we've used this to really capacity build women leaders and also upcoming or aspiring women leaders to take up these trainings to ensure that they have the knowledge and the skills when it comes to gender responsive budgeting at all levels, county and national level. We're also working with different women groups at grassroots level just to encourage women to occupy the decision-making spaces and leadership spaces.
Thank you so much for joining us, Esther. Coming up next, we look at the standard of living that continues to rise. We talk to Kenyans and they let us know how this has affected their businesses and their day-to-day lives. We also talk to an expert who explains to us why the standard of living is increasing. Stay tuned.
Good morning.
Dad, vitamin B2 ni nini?
Vitamin B2 zinapatikana kwa Ilara Fresh Milk. Na unahitaji hizo vitamins kila siku kupata energy, yani mawowo.
Mawowo. Mawowo ya kucheza, mawowo ya kuruka, mawowo ya kuswing, mawowo ya kudunk.
Mawowo. Ilara Fresh Milk, jijaze mawowo.
Over the past few months, the standard of living in Kenya continues to rise. Most Kenyans are feeling frustrated and claim the government is to blame. Let us know whether you agree. Share your thoughts with us on our social media platforms: Facebook, Uzalendo News, on Twitter at Uzalendo News, and join the hashtag Uzalendo News Live. Linduta has more details.
Statistics from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics indicate that the cost of basic needs increased by 8.89% in January. From 2013 to the date, the cost of a 2 kg packet of sister maize flour has gone up by 18 shillings. The price of 1 kg of sukuma wiki has increased by 14 shillings. Fresh milk has risen by 41.5%, and the price of electricity that drives the cost of many other items increased by 56.9%. The economic recession is part of the country's continued effort to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Making it worse is the national loans amounting to 11.7 trillion Kenyan shillings.
I feel that this issue of everything having been hiked up is a bit a challenge to many of us and to many of Kenyans that are living in our country right now. And I think the best thing our government can do is to be a bit considerate with most of the Kenyans. Because I believe not every Kenyan is able to afford something like meals and something like the normal foodstuffs that we have. Yeah, so I think the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and the ministry that manages the petroleum products should be a bit considerate.
Sasa saa hii tukilinganisha hiyo bei, biashara hakuna kitu yenye inatoa, kwa sababu unajaribu kupanda, na kama sasa sisi watu wa vijiji maisha yetu ni huwa hakuna ile flow ya pesa, hakuna pesa. Sasa unajaribu kupunguza ile ratio ya kukaraga mafuta, hatuweki vile tulikuwa tunaweka wakati ilikuwa ya bei chini. Na tena tunajaribu pia kubadilisha, tusitumie hasa chakula yenye inatumia mafuta mingi. Otherwise tukisema ni kama ni hizo chapati, upike chapati peke yake vile tulikuwa tunapika zamani, hakuna pesa yenye utapata. There is no profit.
Kupanda kwa vitu ni makosa ya serikali. Juu kitu ya kwanza tuseme kama unga. It is just some month back mahindi ilikuwa imekosa wanunuaji. Lakini right now wasagaji wanasema hawana mahindi ya kutosha. Meaning hawakununua mahindi yote kutoka kwa wakulima. Sasa ile kitu iliyoko, serikali ndio inaleta hii shida yote. Juu wengine hata sisi wale watu wako chini tunaona kama ni kampeni wanafanya. Because unaweza sema mtu akikwambia wakimaliza kampeni vitu zitapungua. Do you know there was a day they said so? Meaning they can do just that, ndio sasa tuumie, ndio wakiingia kwa serikali wakipunguza tuone kama wamefanya kitu. Kwa hivyo ni serikali inaleta hiyo mzigo kubwa.
In November 2021, the government increased excise duty on most commonly used household goods. This came after Kenya signed a deal to secure loans from the International Monetary Fund as part of the pandemic relief intervention. Does this make the government accountable for higher standard of living? Linduta for Uzalendo News.
A good government is known from a bad government using an infallible test. That under a good government, its laboring force are well fed and well clothed, while under a bad government, its laboring people are badly fed and badly clothed. Where do you think our current government lies? Joining me live is Martin Andati, a political analyst and government expert. Martin, my first question is there any possibility of the standard of living decreasing?
No. In capital letters, because one, we had COVID challenges, so that caused a serious disruption on supply chains and increased the cost of living. It increased the cost of productivity. Two, we are having an election, and you know elections come with uncertainties, so you have people are not going to farm the way they are supposed to do. They are too busy preoccupied with political activities. So that has caused a major disruption. 3, because of politics, certain government policies are not being done. So the focus is not there. 4, because of politics, the cost of money has gone up. So the cost of credit has naturally gone up. So that is going to affect the cost of farm inputs. Then 5, which is a big issue, is the war in Russia and Ukraine. You know, Russia is a big producer of fertilizers, is a big producer of wheat, and Ukraine. And they are big exporters of oil and gas. So that has affected, because everything needs energy. So if the cost of energy goes up, then naturally it means the prices go up. So some of those factors I've just enumerated combined, then they lead to an increased cost of living. So naturally, the cost of living will not come down.
Now, Martin, is the government completely to blame for the increase of prices in goods such as cooking oil and maize flour?
There are those ones you can say yes and no, because the government can put subsidy on some of those things, like they have put subsidy on fuel, and that's why the cost of fuel, petrol, diesel and others, is lower here than in Uganda because of government subsidy. You try to cushion the poor. So you put subsidy and make sure that some of those things remain affordable. But you see, the government also needs taxes, so that is causing a challenge. So the striking a balance in an election here, because you don't want to increase the cost of everything when you are headed into elections. It becomes very difficult for, especially for a president who has an agenda, who has a candidate. So if the cost of living shoots through the roof, the guys who are the other side have an opportunity to really hit him. So trying to strike a balance is a big challenge. 2, some of those international factors are beyond us. You see, like now the war, we have no control over the war. So that has caused a scarcity of wheat. So the cost of wheat flour goes up. There is very little the government can do. You know, you cannot increase the wheat that is in the market, because we have the forces of demand and supply that come into play. You have issues of fuel. So some of those factors are beyond the control of the government.
Mr. Martin, my next question is, the government has been accessing more loans in hopes of developing the country. Has the government lost sight of the fact that the Mwananchi is the one suffering because they have now increased taxes on everything so that they're able to pay back those loans?
You know, borrowing per se is not a problem. The problem is, what do you do with the money you borrow? So some of the money that, not all, because there are some of the things that have been done, like the expressway, which are going to revolutionize this country, because it will take 5-10 minutes from here to the airport. Some of us who travel, we've missed flights before because of the traffic jam. The hours you waste, I do quite a bit of work in Machakos. At times you come and spend 2-3 hours on traffic. So the fuel, the stress, now all that will be a thing of the past. Just the way Kibaki brought, the late President Kibaki, they came up with the Thika Superhighway, and it changed the mess that used to be on Thika Road. It changed the property prices along Thika Superhighway. So now Uhuru has done the expressway, which is going to be a game changer. So some of the projects are good. The only issue is there have been some cases where some of the money has been stolen, like Aurora and Kimwarer, which were very negative for the government. Also, some of the money we borrowed went into recurrent expenditure. And you don't borrow for consumption, because if you borrow for consumption, it becomes a problem. You need to borrow money so that we use it for productivity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin, for answering my questions. I hope Kenyans listening have learnt a thing or two. Around 9.8 million of adults over the age of 18 have substance abuse disorders in the United States of America. Substance abuse disorders affect over 20 million Americans aged 12 and over. The most abused drug in America is alcohol, followed closely by marijuana. David Mooley with more details.
31.9 million Americans aged 12 and above are now using illicit drugs. Within the last year, 51 million individuals of the total population took illegal drugs or abused prescription drugs. If alcohol and cigarettes are included, 165 million Americans or aged 12 and above are actually abusing drugs. Marijuana is the most commonly used federally illegal drug in the United States. It is important to note that 47% of young people use an illegal drug by the time they graduate from high school.
Majuzi wanajiingiza kwa drugs kwa kukosa kazi. Wanamaliza shule, wanakosa kazi ya kufanya, alafu pia groups. Pili wanakaa wenyewe kwa wenyewe. Unaona youth wakiingia, wakianza kukaa na watu ambao wanawaelekeza kwa njia mbaya, wanajiingiza kwa drugs. Lakini sana sana ni kukosa kazi.
Kuna wale wako under influence, maybe ya mabeshte, kuna wengine na lifestyle, kuna wengine maybe home, mtu wako disturbed mentally. Issue ni mob, maybe na hawa shule. But maybe after high school kuna expectations za kama umemaliza high school alafu kole, alafu hakuna jobs. So to forget about a lot of things. Unajipata kwa drugs, alafu pia ni cheap.
As a society, it's our duty to be your brother's keeper. Addiction is a family disease. One person may use, but the whole family suffers. David Mooley for Uzalendo News.
Many lives are lost to the effects of drug abuse. The tragic is felt in communities across nations. Sadly, many of these deaths occur among young people. It is important as a society we try to prevent such deaths by not stigmatizing but helping addicts in recovery. Joining us live is Dr. Isaac Maweo. According to statistics, 47% of adults abuse drugs by the time they graduate from high school. This is a very concerning number. What are the factors leading to such a high statistic?
There are several factors that contribute to this. One is the developmental stage that they are in. Most of them at the age of 14, 15, up to 18, 20, somewhere there, they're in a stage we call identity versus role confusion. And therefore, they are trying to look at what will bring them out, what will make them to stand out. And there are also possibility that they may get influenced by people they think are of great importance and impact their lives, even if they are celebrities or people who are looked as successful, quote unquote, in the community, or maybe using drugs and something, and they think it is a cool thing. So the developmental stage comes with a lot of the curiosity. They want to learn. Their brain is developing, so they feel it's a good trial. More on that, there's also the aspect of them trying to be moved by what we call more of the impulse than logic. People above 25, when the brain is fully formed, will think more on what they intend to do compared to people below that who will wish to do something and now later on ask themselves, how did I get to do this? What was in my mind when they have already done it? So the developmental stage comes with a number of challenges that I've mentioned. Number two is the aspect of the peer pressure. Their colleagues, people within them, around them, the environment contributes a lot to what their behavior is. They are still learning. And therefore, one way of learning is through social learning. They are looking at their colleagues and feeling like, oh, we can learn this is good. So there's that influence. Lastly, of course, is the aspect of social media, where different traits are being portrayed and be different behaviors. And therefore, they pick these and move with it as a trend.
Now, Dr. Isaac, drug abuse isn't only a personal problem, it also affects society. What can society do to help those who are recovering from drug abuse or are currently abusing drugs?
The society plays a key role. And the matters to do with drug abuse, as you said, it's a multi-sectoral and disciplinary aspect where different aspects are involved. Number one, it is a society, first of all, where we have elements of people peddling the drugs. People are, because of maybe different reasons, maybe because of challenges of economy, they feel that this is a good way to do their business, and there's a business they can do. And therefore, the society contributes in passing these drugs from the different guys who get them to the teenagers or to the youths. So there is that part of contribution. So one, the society can be able to look at those people who are doing this business, and maybe, of course, the law takes its course and also challenge them and show them the impact of what they are doing to the society. Number two, the society also can play a role in creating awareness on the impact of this stuff, because the long-term effect of this is not only to this individual, but to the community at large, where young people are no longer productive as they're supposed to be, as well as people who are not able to be safe with them because of the impact of this. So the community can take part in creating awareness on the impact of this. Lastly, the community can also play a role of support in those who are recovering. It's high time we move from stigma to support, because there are people who will label them and say, leave alone, that guy is already a wasted dad. That's not a good thing. Instead of saying, this guy is having this challenge, how can we be help to them? So this is an approach that the society will look at and can look at in through those three aspects.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Isaac, and answering my questions. I truly hope we inspire someone to get the help they need.
Get fresh, gotta get fresh.
Down is a boom boom pow, down is boom boom pow. Smells baya na uchafuzi na zibi na improve downy. Protect nguo zangu na nukia niko safi. Lazima niwe fresh na down is boom boom pow. Boom boom pow, down is new boom boom pow. Smells zote na zi boom boom pow. Powerful freshness, down is boom boom pow.
That is it from Uzalendo Newsroom. I am Lisa Mudhani. Thank you for joining us and watching till the end. This is Uzalendo News.